The early morning sunlight, sharp and crystalline, glinted with an almost aggressive brilliance off the polished brass buttons of Officer Caleb Dixon's immaculate dress uniform as he adjusted his stiff, unforgiving collar for what felt like the fifth or perhaps 50th time. Behind him, a silent, tawny shadow detached itself from the deeper gloom of the barracks room. Archie, his highly trained, fiercely intelligent Belgian Malinois partner, watched with those unnervingly perceptive amber eyes, his noble head tilted at a slight inquisitive angle, as if genuinely amused or perhaps bemused by his handler's uncharacteristic display of meticulous, almost obsessive nervous precision. Everything, and I mean everything, has to be absolutely perfect today. Arch, Caleb muttered more to himself than to the dog as he ran a lint roller with military fastidiousness over the already pristine sleeve of his uniform. Fort Richardson's annual Military Excellence and Remembrance Ceremony wasn't just another routine base event, another box to be ticked on the command calendar. It was, by reputation and tradition, the most prestigious, most highly scrutinized public gathering on the sprawling base's annual schedule. This year, however, carried an even greater, more palpable weight of significance, with the widely publicized, much anticipated arrival of General Douglas Pryor, the legendary, almost mythical decorated four-star general whose innovative, often controversial battlefield strategies were credited by many with fundamentally reshaping the landscape of modern military doctrine and engagement. Pryor was a living legend, a man whose very presence demanded perfection. Caleb's initial selection for the K-9 security detail for such a high-profile event had at first felt like a significant career-affirming honor, a clear recognition of his and Archie's exceptional service record. That feeling of pride, however, had rapidly, unpleasantly deflated when he learned through the ever-active base grapevine, and later confirmed in a stark briefing about General Pryor's notorious, openly expressed disdain for the military's K-9 program. The whispers, the anecdotes exchanged in hushed tones in the mess hall, and the training yards painted a consistent, unflattering portrait of the general, a staunch, unyielding traditionalist, a man who considered highly trained working dogs an anachronistic, unnecessary, and worst of all, unpredictable liability in an era of sophisticated technological warfare. Officer Dixon, Captain Brenner Caleb's Direct K-9 unit commander, a man whose own career aspirations often seemed to hinge on the flawless performance of his subordinates, had set his voice tight with an uncharacteristic anxiety during yesterday's final pre-ceremony security briefing. I cannot stress this enough. Given General Pryor's, shall we say, firmly held opinions on the efficacy and cost-effectiveness of the K-9 program, it is absolutely imperative that your partner Archie is on his absolute unequivocal best behavior tomorrow. No incidents, no surprises. Am I making myself abundantly clear? The message, unspoken but heavily underscored, was crystal, chillingly clear. Do not under any circumstances give General Pryor any ammunition, any pretext to further criticize, or God forbid recommend defunding their already beleaguered K-9 program. Archie, as if sensing the sudden tension in Caleb's posture, the weight of unspoken anxieties, let out a loud, surprisingly human-like yawn, momentarily breaking Caleb's intense concentration. Despite being consistently ranked as one of the most effectively trained, highly skilled dogs on the entire base, with exceptional, often record-breaking scores in scent, detection, personnel protection, and suspect apprehension, Archie possessed a deeply ingrained, sometimes exasperating, unpredictable, almost maverick-like playful streak. This mischievous undercurrent, endearing in private moments, had unfortunately landed them in rather significant career-jeopardizing hot water on more than one memorable, deeply embarrassing occasion. Caleb winced internally, the unwelcome memories flooding back with vivid, uncomfortable clarity. There was the high-profile firearms demonstration for a visiting congressional delegation last month, when Archie, apparently deciding that the distinguished senior senator's expensive, impeccably polished Italian leather shoelaces represented an immediate and pressing threat to national security, had chosen that precise, highly public moment to conduct an impromptu, vigorous inspection, unfortunately, knocking the startled dignitary completely off balance mid-impassioned speech. Or even more mortifyingly, the time during the annual base-wide formal parade exercises, when his usually disciplined partner had spotted a particularly audacious squirrel darting across the parade ground, and with a joyous, unrestrained bark had dragged a flailing Caleb leash and all directly across the meticulously ruler-straight, aligned formation of marching soldiers, leaving a trail of utter chaos, scattered headgear, and suppressed snickers in their wake. Each incident had resulted in lengthy, uncomfortable debriefings with a furious Captain Bernaire and a renewed, albeit temporary, period of intense scrutiny for their K-9 unit. "This isn't like those other times, buddy," Caleb said, now his voice low and earnest, as he knelt to meticulously check the fit and fastenings of Archie's specialized tactical vest. "This isn't about a few ruffled feathers or a disrupted parade. General Pryor, the man himself, already thinks our entire K-9 program, not just here at Fort Richardson, but across all branches, is a colossal waste of valuable military resources, a sentimental throwback to a bygone era. One slip up today, Arch just one, however minor, and he'll seize upon it, use it as irrefutable evidence to slash funding, to reallocate our handlers, to effectively dismantle everything we've worked so hard to build." He attached the gleaming braided ceremonial leash to Archie's reinforced collar. This was the special, rarely used leash reserved exclusively for high-profile formal events, its sturdy, high-tensile material intricately woven with the official base insignia. "Just this once, my friend, please, no games today," Caleb pleaded, looking directly intently into his partner's intelligent, unnervingly perceptive amber eyes. "I need you more than ever to be the absolute epitome of the perfect disciplined and very obedient military working dog for the next 4 hours. Our careers, the future of our entire unit, it might very well depend on it." Archie responded with a single short, solemn bark, a sound that Caleb chose with a surge of desperate optimism to interpret as a sincere affirmation of agreement, though the slight, almost imperceptible, mischievous wag of his plumed tail suggested worryingly that the critical message might not have fully or perhaps permanently registered. As they stepped out from the cool, familiar dimness of the K-9 kennels and into the bright, almost blinding morning sunlight, the sprawling Fort Richardson base was utterly transformed. Vibrant red, white, and blue bunting acres of it decorated the imposing reviewing stands in the length of the parade route. Impeccably uniformed honor guard members, their movements precise, almost robotic, stood at perfect, unwavering attention, their rifles gleaming as they prepared for the imminent formal inspection. High-ranking officers, their chests ablaze with rows of colorful service ribbons and gleaming medals earned in distant, forgotten conflicts, moved with an air of grave, purposeful importance, their polished boots clicking rhythmically on the asphalt. The very atmosphere of the ceremonial grounds hummed with a palpable, contained, almost electric energy as hundreds of officers, enlisted personnel, and invited civilian dignitaries stood at respectful attention under the vast, cloudless, impossibly blue sky. Caleb positioned himself and Archie precisely to the inch at their designated security post near the east entrance of the ceremonial parade ground, maintaining a flawless, ramrod-straight military posture despite the growing churning anxiety in the pit of his stomach. He could feel the curious, often critical gazes of other officers upon Archie. "Command post to all security units." A clipped professional voice crackled suddenly in his earpiece. "Distinguished visitor convoy approaching Eastern Checkpoint. ETA 3 minutes. I repeat, ETA 3 minutes. All units be advised, condition Alpha." Archie, up until this point, had been a model of canine compliance, sitting calmly, patiently at Caleb's side. But as the distant, almost subliminal sound of approaching vehicles, the low rumble of powerful engines reached his incredibly sensitive ears, Something profound, something almost electric changed in the Belgian Malinois' demeanor. His intelligent ears, normally relaxed and expressive, pricked sharply, almost painfully forward, swiveling like radar dishes. His powerful, athletic body tensed, every muscle coiling like a loaded spring in a way that sent immediate urgent alarm signals coursing through Caleb's experienced, finely tuned handler instincts. This was not Archie's playful stance. This was something else entirely. "Easy, Arch, easy now," Caleb whispered, his voice a low, reassuring murmur, his hand tightening almost imperceptibly on the ceremonial leash. The official motorcade, sleek and imposing, now came into clear view, three identical, gleaming black SUVs, their windows heavily tinted, obscuring their occupants from view, flanked by a formidable escort of heavily armed military police, outriders on powerful motorcycles. Base intelligence, Caleb recalled from the morning briefing, had reported a recent significant uptick in intercepted chatter amongst known extremist groups, suggesting potential, albeit unspecified, threats against high-ranking military officials. Nothing concrete, nothing actionable had materialized, but the underlying tension was undeniable. General Douglas Pryor emerged from the lead SUV with the straight-backed, indomitable posture of a man who had spent 4 arduous decades commanding unwavering respect and instant obedience. His immaculate uniform bore the visible, almost crushing weight of countless medals, citations, and commendations, each a silent testament to a lifetime of dedicated, often perilous service. His weathered, deeply lined face, a roadmap of past campaigns and sleepless nights, was an impassive, unreadable mask as he surveyed the meticulously prepared ceremony grounds with a cool, appraising, almost dismissive gaze. "Archie Platts, stay," Caleb whispered again, more firmly, this time his voice low and urgent, as he felt his partner's internal tension, his coiled energy growing, escalating with every passing second. Something was profoundly, disturbingly different about the dog's behavior this morning. This wasn't his usual, sometimes exasperating, underlying playfulness, his occasional rebellious streak. This was something far more focused, more intense, more urgent. As General Pryor, accompanied by his own close protection and security detail, and a phalanx of base command staff began to approach their designated position at the edge of the parade ground, Archie suddenly, without any warning, without any of Caleb's familiar pre-alert cues, barked. It was a single, sharp, undeniably authoritative sound that shattered the carefully orchestrated, almost reverent ceremonial silence like a gunshot. The general's personal security team, highly trained, combat-hardened professionals, tensed instantly, their hands instinctively, almost invisibly, moving towards their concealed sidearms. Several nearby officers gasped, their eyes wide with disbelief and dawning horror. "Control your animal, officer," General Pryor ordered, his voice low, resonant, carrying an unmistakable edge of cold, sharp displeasure that cut through the sudden, shocked hush. "Yes, sir. My sincere apologies, General, sir." Caleb responded, his face burning with a hot, agonizing wave of acute embarrassment and a sinking, dreadful premonition of disaster. He tugged sharply, perhaps too sharply, on the leash, a silent, desperate command for Archie to desist. General Pryor, after a single withering glare that seemed to pierce Caleb to the core, resumed his slow, deliberate walk towards the main reviewing stand. But Archie's highly uncharacteristic, deeply unsettling behavior, far from abating, now worsened dramatically. The dog's barking became more insistent, more frantic, his powerful body straining, lunging against the taut, unyielding leash, as numerous officers, their expressions a mixture of shock, disapproval, and thinly veiled amusement, exchanged uncomfortable, embarrassed glances. The perfectly planned, meticulously orchestrated ceremony was visibly, audibly derailing before their very eyes, and Archie, it seemed, was the unapologetic, unapologetic catalyst. With a sudden, explosive, almost unbelievable surge of raw power, Archie lunged forward with all his might, his 90 pounds of lean, focused muscle directed with singular, terrifying intent. Caleb, caught momentarily off guard by the sheer unexpected ferocity of the lunge, felt the ceremonial leash, its supposedly unbreakable high-tensile fibers, slip with sickening ease from his sweaty, suddenly nerveless palm. In a heartbeat, in a chaotic blur of tan fur and desperate canine urgency, Archie bounded directly, unerringly, towards the astonished General Pryor, who turned his eyes, widening in disbelief, just in time to see 90 pounds of highly agitated, determined military working dog leaping with terrifying speed and precision directly towards him. The general's personal security team, reacting with commendable speed, moved to intercept to shield their principal. But Archie, fueled by some primal, inexplicable instinct, was faster, more agile. He hit General Pryor squarely in the chest with his powerful front paws, the impact forceful enough to nearly knock the distinguished four-star officer, a man renowned for his unshakable composure, clean off his feet and backwards onto the parade ground. Gasps of collective horror, of stunned disbelief, echoed across the suddenly silent, frozen assembly as the meticulously planned ceremony, despite its deeply awkward, almost catastrophic start, had, with a visible effort of collective will from the base command, somehow managed to progress with a semblance of its intended military precision. Dignitaries, their faces carefully composed masks of polite interest, sat in perfectly aligned, uncomfortable rows on the hard bleacher seats facing the flag-draped, elevated stage. Caleb, his heart still pounding, a frantic tattoo against his ribs, stood rigidly at his assigned security position at the far side of the stage, gripping Archie's now retrieved leash so tightly that his knuckles had turned a stark, bloodless white. His mind raced, a chaotic whirlwind of possible explanations, of desperate excuses he could offer to a surely incandescent Captain Bernard after the ceremony's conclusion, though he knew with a cold, sinking certainty that no excuse, however plausible, however heartfelt, would suffice this time. K-9 Handler Dixon to command post, Caleb whispered urgently, desperately into his comm unit, his voice barely audible above the stirring strains of the military band. Request immediate permission to withdraw K-9 unit from ceremonial duties. Repeat request withdrawal. He prayed with a fervor born of sheer panic for a swift, merciful extraction before anything else, anything worse, could possibly go wrong. Negative, Dixon, came the immediate, clipped, icily formal response from Captain Brenner himself. Maintain your designated position until the official conclusion of the ceremony. We will discuss this incident at length afterwards in my office. The curt and motionless reply confirmed what Caleb already suspected. What he knew deep in his gut, this would almost certainly be his last official assignment with the Fort Richardson K-9 unit. By tomorrow morning, he would likely be filling out transfer paperwork, his dream career in tatters, returning with a heavy heart to the monotonous routine of regular patrol duty. And Archie, his brilliant, frustrating, beloved Archie, would be summarily reassigned to another, perhaps less understanding, less patient handler, someone who might not fully appreciate the extraordinary, unique abilities that lay beneath his K-9 partner's occasional exasperating and undeniably disruptive mischief. The thought was a cold, hard knot in Caleb's stomach. The base master of ceremonies, a dapper silver-haired major with a booming parade ground voice, now approached the central microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, officers, and enlisted personnel of Fort Richardson, he intoned, his voice resonating across the packed parade ground. It is my distinct honor and profound personal privilege to present to you our keynote speaker for this auspicious occasion, a true American hero, a visionary leader, General Douglas Pryor. A wave of polite, sustained applause thundered across the assembled crowd as General Pryor, his earlier visible irritation, now expertly concealed behind a carefully constructed mask of professional dignity and statesmanlike composure, approached the podium. The bright morning sunlight glinted off the numerous impressive rows of medals adorning his chest as he meticulously adjusted the microphone to his preferred height. Distinguished guests, fellow officers, dedicated enlisted personnel of this fine command, the general began, his authoritative, commanding voice carrying effortlessly across the vast grounds even without the aid of amplification. The unwavering foundation of true military excellence, the bedrock upon which all successful operations are built, rests as it always has and always will upon three immutable, indispensable pillars: discipline, precision, and unwavering absolute reliability. As the general continued his eloquent, well-rehearsed address, speaking passionately about the critical importance of military readiness, of technological superiority, of strategic foresight in an increasingly complex and dangerous world, Caleb, despite his own internal turmoil and gnawing anxiety, noticed a subtle yet significant change in Archie's demeanor. The dog's earlier, almost frantic agitation, his unexplained aggression towards the general, had vanished completely. It was replaced now by a quiet, intense, focused alertness, a state of heightened sensory awareness that Caleb recognized instantly, intimately, from their countless hours of shared training exercises and their demanding, often perilous, operational deployments overseas. Archie's intelligent, expressive ears rotated slowly, methodically, like miniature radar dishes, as if tracking sounds, vibrations, or perhaps even subtle shifts in air currents that lay far beyond the limited range of human perception. His powerful athletic body was tense but perfectly controlled, every muscle taut alert. This was not the behavior of a dog seeking attention or mischief or an escape from boredom. This was Archie in full working mode, the highly focused, almost preternatural state he entered when actively detecting hidden explosives, tracking elusive targets, or sensing imminent, unseen danger. But what Caleb wondered with a fresh surge of unease could he possibly be alerting to during a supposedly secure, thoroughly vetted, high-profile military ceremony in the very heart of a fortified U.S. Army base? When lives hang in the balance, gentlemen, General Pryor continued, his voice resonating with conviction, his gaze sweeping across the assembled troops. When the fate of nations may rest upon the actions of a few, we simply cannot afford the presence of unpredictable variables. We cannot tolerate elements within our operational framework that introduce uncertainty, that compromise consistency. Every component, every individual, every piece of equipment must function with absolute, unwavering, predictable consistency every single time. Archie's breathing, Caleb now realized with a growing sense of alarm, had changed dramatically. It had become shallow, rapid, almost panting, despite the coolness of the morning air. A quiet, almost inaudible whine, a sound barely perceptible, even to Caleb's attuned ears, escaped his throat. It was the specific low-frequency vocalization he'd been painstakingly trained to use when confirming a positive detection of a target scent. Explosives, narcotics, human quarry, while remaining in a static, concealed position. Caleb's gaze swept frantically, desperately across the assembled crowd, the distant security positions on the rooftops of surrounding buildings, the ranks of dignitaries on the reviewing stand, seeing nothing, absolutely nothing unusual, out of place, or overtly threatening. "Command Post Kennerny 9 Dixon," Caleb whispered urgently into his comm unit, his professional instincts, his deep, unshakable trust in his partner, now completely overriding his earlier paralyzing embarrassment and fear of reprisal. "Be advised, potential irregular, possibly alert behavior from K9 asset. Requesting immediate additional visual sweep of the entire perimeter and heightened surveillance on all elevated positions." "Ah, negative, Dixon," came the instant, predictably annoyed and dismissive response from Captain Bernier. "All security protocols are active, fully functional, and reporting green across the board. Control your damned asset, officer. This is becoming a monumental embarrassment." Archie's low, insistent whining intensified, his entire body now quivering with a barely suppressed urgent energy, as General Pryor, oblivious to the silent, invisible drama unfolding just feet away from him, reached the dramatic, rhetorical crescendo of his speech. The dog's intelligent, focused eyes weren't on the general anymore, Caleb noted with a jolt. Instead, they were scanning methodically, systematically back and forth across the assembled audience and the surrounding areas, as if he were tracking something or someone in motion, something unseen, unheard by anyone else. recent revolutionary advancements in artificial intelligence, in drone technology and remote sensing capabilities, the general proclaimed, his voice ringing with fervent conviction, have in many critical areas effectively eliminated the need for outdated, often unreliable, traditional methodologies. The profound, almost cruel irony of his words, given Archie's increasingly agitated, clearly indicative behavior, was not lost on Caleb. As Archie's persistent, almost frantic actions increasingly undeniably suggested he was detecting something significant, something potentially lethal, that the entirety of their sophisticated, multi-layered human and technological security elements had completely, utterly missed. Caleb felt the ceremonial leash still clutched in his white-knuckled grip, growing increasingly, alarmingly taut as Archie leaned further forward, his powerful shoulders straining against the restraint, his sensitive black nose working overtime, flaring, twitching, dissecting some invisible airborne sense signature that remained utterly imperceptible to everyone else on that parade ground. Years of intense shared partnership, of life and death reliance on each other's instincts and abilities, had taught Caleb to trust these subtle, often inexplicable signals implicitly. Archie's extraordinary detection capabilities were legendary within the canine community. He had on multiple occasions located deeply buried, ingeniously concealed IEDs that had eluded the most sophisticated state-of-the-art electronic scanning equipment. He had found missing abducted personnel when experienced human search teams equipped with all manner of technology had officially given up, declared the search futile. "Sir Captain Brenner," he tried again desperately on the secure security channel, his voice now tight with a barely controlled urgency. "I must reiterate, my K9 partner is displaying clear, consistent, undeniable alert behavior, consistent with established threat detection protocols. I strongly advise an immediate precautionary evacuation of the primary dignitary." "Dixon, so help me God, maintain your damn position and control your dog." Captain Bernaire cut him off sharply, his voice now laced with undisguised fury. "This is your final, and I mean final warning. Officer, one more peep out of you, or that mutt, and you'll be cleaning latrines in Alaska before sunset." Sweat, cold and clammy, beaded on Caleb's forehead as he found himself caught in an agonizing, impossible dilemma, trapped between the rigid, unyielding demands of military protocol and the undeniable screaming voice of his own hard-won, battle-tested instinct. Archie wasn't just acting strangely erratically, he was actively, desperately trying to communicate that something was terribly, imminently wrong. The same extraordinary, almost supernatural instincts that had saved countless lives, including Caleb's own, during their harrowing deployments in the dusty, sun-scorched hellholes of Iraq and Afghanistan, were now setting off every internal alarm bell. Caleb possessed alarm bells that everyone in a position of authority, everyone with the power to act, seemed absolutely stubbornly determined to ignore. On the flag-draped stage, General Pryor, a masterful orator, was building inexorably toward his powerful, patriotic conclusion, gesturing emphatically with his hands as he outlined his bold, ambitious vision for the future of the United States military. When uncertainty is meticulously eliminated from the equation, he declared, his voice ringing with unwavering confidence, "When every single component of our complex, interconnected warfighting machine functions exactly as it is designed to function, without hesitation, without deviation, without failure, only then can we truly, absolutely guarantee the safety of our invaluable personnel and the ultimate success of our critical global missions." Archie suddenly stiffened completely, every muscle in his powerful body coiling like overwound springs beneath his snug-fitting tactical vest. His hackles rose, a dark, bristling ridge along his spine. Caleb had seen this exact terrifying posture only once before in their entire shared career, mere seconds before Archie had launched himself a silent, furry missile of righteous fury at a heavily armed, suicide-vested insurgent who had been stealthily approaching their unsuspecting patrol under the cover of darkness in a narrow, winding alleyway in Kandahar. Whatever the dog had now detected Whatever unseen, unheard threat had triggered this ultimate, irrevocable response, he was clearly preparing to respond with every ounce of his formidable strength, with everything he had. Archie leaned steady. Caleb whispered urgently, desperately tightening his already bone-crushing grip on the ceremonial leash, while his eyes frantically, uselessly scanned the surrounding rooftops. The distant tree lines, the sea of anonymous faces in the crowd, searching for whatever unseen menace, whatever imminent danger had triggered his partner's extreme, unmistakable life-or-death response. The reinforced high-tensile material of the leash dug painfully deeply into the flesh of his palm as Archie's internal tension, his coiled explosive energy, increased to an almost unbearable breaking point. General Pryor's practiced resonant voice reached its carefully modulated, stirring crescendo, echoing across the silent, sun-drenched parade grounds as he delivered the final soaring lines of his meticulously crafted address. And so we stand ever vigilant, my friends, prepared, resolute, ready to face whatever challenges, whatever adversaries the uncertain future may hold. The rest of his ringing sentence was utterly, completely lost, swallowed by the sudden, shocking eruption of chaos as several critical, life-altering things happened simultaneously in a horrifying, almost surreal, slow-motion ballet of violence and desperate courage. Archie's powerful, coiled muscles bunched and then released with an explosive, almost unimaginable force. The reinforced, supposedly unbreakable ceremonial leash designed Caleb had been assured to withstand over 300 pounds of sustained pulling pressure snapped with a sharp, sickening sound, like a dry branch breaking, like a high-velocity firecracker exploding. Caleb lunged forward instinctively, desperately, his outstretched fingers grasping only at empty, mocking air as his beloved partner, his friend, his brother in arms, became a blurred, unstoppable, tan streak of pure, focused canine determination. Archie, no down. Hurry, Caleb shouted, his voice, a raw, desperate desire, in the sudden, stunned silence drowned out almost immediately by General Pryor's startled, indignant cry of, "What the devil?" The entire vast assembly, hundreds of soldiers, officers, dignitaries, and civilians, seemed to freeze solid, a collective tableau of shocked, horrified disbelief, watching transfixed as the powerful Belgian Malinois, a creature seemingly possessed, launched himself with incredible, terrifying speed and precision directly towards the elevated flag-draped stage in what appeared to be a second, even more aggressive, unprovoked, and utterly inexplicable attack on the distinguished keynote guest. Uniformed security personnel, their faces masked of alarm and disbelief, moved forward with urgent practiced speed, their hands already reaching for their holstered weapons. But they were far too slow, too cumbersome to intercept the rapidly, impossibly moving dog. Time itself seemed to distort, to stretch, to slow to an agonizing, almost unbearable crawl as Archie sailed with breathtaking grace and power through the sunlit air. His lean, athletic body perfectly aligned, his jaws slightly open, his eyes fixed with an unwavering, laser-like intensity on his target. Caleb sprinted forward, his lungs burning, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird, desperate, utterly desperate to prevent what looked to all intents and purposes like a catastrophic, career-ending, perhaps even life-ending disaster unfolding in horrifying slow motion before the shocked eyes of hundreds of incredulous witnesses. But then in that same surreal, stretched microsecond, something else caught Caleb's peripheral vision. A brief, almost subliminal, impossibly bright glint of reflected light. A tiny ephemeral spark, like a distant star reflecting sharply, unnaturally from the sun-drenched rooftop of the main administrative building, some 300 yards distant, directly behind and overlooking the assembled audience in the ceremonial stage. A sniper's scope. The sharp whip crack of a high-powered silenced rifle shattered the frozen, unnatural silence of that suspended moment, the sound rolling like a sudden, unexpected clap of summer thunder across the horrified, uncomprehending parade grounds. In that exact same horrifying instant, Archie, his mid-air trajectory perfectly, miraculously calculated, collided with General Pryor, with the full 90-pound force of his powerful airborne frame. He hit the general squarely in the chest, not with bared teeth, not with aggression, but with a precise, almost surgical, focused impact, driving both the startled general and himself violently protectively backward, down behind the imagined sanctuary of the solid, heavy oak podium, just as a single deadly high-velocity bullet, its passage marked by a faint, almost invisible shimmer in the air, cut with lethal, whispered precision through the exact empty space where General Pryor's head, his life had been but a mere infinitesimal split-second earlier. Pandemonium absolute and terrifying erupted. Seasoned, combat-hardened security teams, their training kicking in with instinctive life-saving efficiency, moved with incredible practiced speed surrounding the fallen general and the heroic dog, forming an instant impenetrable human shield around them, their own bodies offered as a desperate, willing bulwark against the possibility of additional follow-up shots. Officers, their faces grim, their voices sharp with adrenaline, screamed urgent, conflicting orders. Attendees, their faces masks of terror and disbelief, dropped almost as one to the hard, unforgiving ground, some scrambling frantically blindly toward the nearest perceived exits, while others, paralyzed by fear, simply froze in terrified, stunned horror. Active shooter, code red. The urgent, panicked alert blared deafeningly through every comm unit, every radio on the base, as the highly trained counter-sniper security teams, their senses preternaturally sharpened by years of specialized training, pinpointed the probable horrifying source of the deadly unseen attack. Sniper on building Charlie rooftop, eastern aspect. All units respond. All units converge and neutralize. Through the maelstrom of ensuing chaos, through the desperate surging tide of panicked humanity, Caleb, his own safety forgotten, his mind numb with a terrifying cocktail of fear, disbelief, and a dawning, incredible understanding, fought his way with a desperate, single-minded urgency towards the protective, heavily armed circle of security personnel now surrounding the stage, his heart pounding with an almost unbearable, agonizing fear for his beloved partner, for Archie. K9 handler coming through, that's my dog. Let me through, damn it, that's my dog. The tight protective ring of grim-faced, heavily armed security personnel parted slightly hesitantly, allowing Caleb a fleeting, heart-stopping glimpse of General Pryor, who was now on the ground, clearly dazed, disoriented, but blessedly, miraculously conscious. And Archie, his brave, incredible Archie, was standing steadfastly, protectively over him in a classic, unwavering K9 protective stance, despite a visible, shockingly bright trickle of dark crimson blood now matting the thick, tawny fur around his left ear, where the assassin's bullet meant for the general had apparently almost impossibly grazed him. The magnificent Belgian Malinois, despite his own painful bleeding injury, remained utterly focused, completely alert, ignoring his own wound, while his intelligent, watchful eyes continued to scan the surrounding area relentlessly for any additional lingering threats. "Secure that animal! Get that damn dog under control!" A young, panicked security officer shouted, his weapon still drawn, his voice high-pitched with fear and residual adrenaline. "Stand down, officer, stand down!" Caleb countered sharply, his voice ringing with an authority he didn't know he possessed, as he dropped to his knees beside his injured, heroic partner. "He's not a threat. He just saved the general's life. You damn fool." Blood dark and shockingly vibrant against the lighter fur matted the area around Archie's left ear. But upon closer, trembling inspection, the wound, Caleb realized with a profound, flooding wave of immense relief, appeared to be superficial. The assassin's bullet, by some miracle of trajectory and timing, had merely grazed the tough outer edge of his ear rather than penetrating his skull, leaving a deep, bleeding, but almost certainly not life-threatening furrow along the sensitive cartilage. Archie, despite the undeniable pain, maintained his protective, watchful position over the now slowly recovering general, who was carefully, cautiously sitting up, one hand pressed gingerly against his chest, where Archie's forceful, life-saving impact had almost certainly left a significant, painful collection of bruises. Shooter neutralized, repeat shooter is neutralized. The welcome tension-breaking report came crackling through the comms units. Suspect is in custody on Building Charlie rooftop. Initial sweep indicates lone assailant. We are now conducting a secondary, more thorough sweep for any additional possible threats or accomplices. Uniformed medical personnel, their faces grim, rushed forward with stretchers, oxygen tanks, and fully stocked trauma kits. But General Pryor, with a surprising strength and resolve, waved them back momentarily, his eyes filled with a new dawning, almost incredulous understanding, fixed intently on the bleeding, panting dog still standing. Resolute, unwavering guard over him. Is he hit badly? He asked, his normally commanding, authoritative tone now tinged with an unfamiliar, surprising note of genuine, almost paternal concern. Ear wound only, General, sir. Caleb reported, his hands gently, expertly examining Archie's injury while simultaneously trying to maintain a facade of professional composure, despite the wild, chaotic surge of adrenaline still coursing like fire through his own system. A senior security officer, his face pale but his voice steady, approached them holding a small metallic object carefully in his gloved hand. The deformed, flattened slug of the assassin's bullet, which had been found embedded deep in the solid oak backdrop behind where the general had been standing just moments before his miraculous K9-assisted escape. Preliminary ballistics assessment, sir. The officer reported, his voice hushed with awe. Indicates the shot would almost certainly have been fatal. Direct, unimpeded trajectory to your precise position, sir, if you hadn't been forcibly knocked down at that exact critical moment. The profound, unspoken implication of his words hung heavy, almost palpably, in the suddenly silent, charged air. General Pryor's gaze moved slowly, thoughtfully from the mangled bullet to the splintered impact point in the wooden backdrop. Then back to Archie, who, now that his handler was present and the immediate primary threat appeared to have been neutralized, had finally reluctantly relaxed his rigid guard posture, allowing the attentive medic to gently clean and assess his bleeding wound. He knew, our General Pryor said quietly, almost to himself, a look of profound, almost stunned realization dawning in his intelligent, tired eyes. From the very moment my convoy arrived on this base, from that first seemingly inexplicable bark, he was trying to warn us. He sensed the danger. Caleb nodded slowly, the confusing, terrifying pieces of the morning's chaotic events finally belatedly falling into their correct, horrifying place. That's why he was acting so strangely, so agitatedly at your arrival, sir. It wasn't aggression, it was an alert. And then during your speech, he was actively detecting the imminent threat, the shooter's presence, long before any of our sophisticated security systems or any of our human operatives could possibly identify or react to it. The base security team leader, a grizzled, battle-hardened master sergeant named Wallace, approached them, his expression grave, his uniform impeccably neat despite the surrounding chaos. Sir, the shooter has been positively identified. His name is Amir Kazmi, a known highly skilled operative with direct confirmed ties to several international extremist organizations. He was equipped with a military-grade long-range sniper rifle and a sophisticated spotting scope. He had apparently been in his concealed position on that rooftop since before dawn this morning. He'd constructed a highly effective, almost invisible hidden sniper's nest using materials that perfectly matched the building's existing HVAC system, completely masking his heat signature from our routine pre-ceremony thermal scans. But how in God's name did the dog detect him from that extreme distance through all that interference? Asked one of the younger, visibly shaken security officers, looking at Archie with a newfound, almost fearful respect. Sent, most likely, at least initially, Caleb explained, a surge of immense professional pride momentarily overcoming the lingering, sickening residue of adrenaline and fear. Belgian Malinois, especially those with Archie's exceptional genetic lineage and intensive training, can detect specific human scent particles, even individual fear pheromones, at truly extraordinary distances, often miles, especially with favorable wind conditions. Archie. Archie has always possessed absolutely exceptional, almost freakish olfactory detection capabilities. Far better, far more reliable than any dog I've ever worked with or even heard about. General Pryor was watching the entire interaction with a quiet, intense, almost brooding interest. His earlier well-documented, openly expressed disdain for military working dogs now conspicuously completely absent. His face was a complex mask of conflicting emotions, relief, gratitude, and a dawning, uncomfortable reassessment of his own long-held, deeply ingrained prejudices. In all my years of service, in all my commands, particularly those overseeing complex special operations, he said slowly, his voice reflective, I have consistently, almost religiously prioritized advanced technological solutions, sophisticated surveillance drones, highly sensitive seismic and acoustic sensors, cutting-edge biometric identification systems. I confess I had come to consider the K-9 program a somewhat traditional, almost sentimental element within our modern military structure, a legacy capability we maintained more out of a sense of historic duty, perhaps, than any real quantifiable strategic value in the 21st century. He looked directly, searchingly at Archie, who, despite his bandaged ear, returned his gaze with that same calm, intelligent, unwavering focus. I have never, the general admitted, his voice barely a whisper, never in my entire 40-year career been so profoundly, so utterly, so devastatingly, and I must add, so gratefully pleased to have my professional assessment proven so comprehensively, so catastrophically wrong. The once meticulously ordered ceremonial parade grounds had, in a matter of mere chaotic minutes, transformed from a pristine scene of solemn military pageantry into an active, sprawling, and highly secured major crime investigation site. Despite the urgent, almost frantic insistence of the base medical team, General Pryor had steadfastly, stubbornly refused immediate evacuation to the base hospital. He had accepted only the most basic field treatment for his bruised chest and a mild concussion, insisting instead on remaining on site, observing, with a grim, newfound interest, the complex, rapidly unfolding forensic investigation into the attempt on his life. Archie, his bleeding ear now neatly, expertly bandaged by an admiring veterinary technician, the white gauze starkly, surprisingly clean against his dark tan fur, sat calmly with an almost regal dignity beside Caleb as the painstaking, methodical work of evidence collection and witness interviews continued around them. The K-9 hero seemed almost nonchalant, remarkably unfazed by his own injury, his brush with death maintaining his characteristic quiet alertness, his unwavering focus despite the pervasive, lingering chaos and the residual, palpable tension that still hung heavy in the air. Trajectory confirmed, General Sir, announced the lead forensics investigator, a tall, intense woman in a sterile white jumpsuit, approaching General Pryor with a sophisticated laser pointing device. She activated the device and a thin, brilliant red beam of light shot out, revealing a perfectly straight, unwavering line from the now secured sniper's nest on the distant administrative building's rooftop, directly to the precise spot on the stage where the general had been standing just moments before Archie's miraculous, life-saving intervention. The shot, as we suspected, was expertly planned, perfectly executed. Had you not been forcibly removed from that position at that precise critical moment, the bullet would have struck you directly in the head, sir. There is no doubt. The base commander, Colonel Williams, a portly, normally jovial man, whose face was now pale and drawn with the stress of the morning's events, joined the growing somber circle of officers, having just finished coordinating the implementation of a full base-wide lockdown protocol. The evidence recovery team found his nest on the rooftop, General. It was diabolically clever. He'd constructed a perfectly camouflaged blind using discarded construction materials and sections of ducting that precisely matched the building's existing HVAC system. It effectively masked his heat signature from our pre-dawn thermal imaging scans and made him virtually invisible to standard visual surveillance. Shrein Putin. Yet this dog, General Pryor, said, his voice now quiet, almost reverent, as he turned his gaze once again towards Caleb and the patiently waiting Archie. This remarkable, unassuming animal somehow inexplicably knew. From the very moment my convoy arrived on this base, from that first seemingly random bark, he was actively alerting to a lethal threat that our entire multi-layered, technologically advanced security apparatus had completely, utterly failed to detect. As the hushed, serious conversation continued, Archie, who had appeared to be dozing lightly, suddenly sharply perked up. His newly bandaged ear twitched. His head snapped around his body, instantly alert, as he caught a familiar and apparently unwelcome scent on the breeze. He turned his intense gaze towards the distant administration building, just as a small, heavily armed group of military police officers emerged, escorting a handcuffed, struggling figure towards a waiting armored transport vehicle. Even from this considerable distance, Caleb recognized with a surge of pride the unwavering, focused precision with which Archie tracked the suspect's every movement. The now captured, neutralized shooter, Amir Kazmi, being taken into secure custody. He's still actively monitoring the identified threats, sir, Caleb explained quietly, as the other officers, noticing Archie's sudden renewed focused attention, turned to look. Even after confirmed neutralization, a highly trained K-9 like Archie will maintain a heightened state of situational awareness, a vigilant watch until the threat is completely verifiably removed from the immediate operational environment. It's ingrained in him. He never truly stands down. 3 long, tense, exhausting hours after the thwarted assassination attempt, Fort Richardson remained under a state of significantly heightened security, a fortress within a fortress. The grand annual military excellence ceremony had, of course, been officially unceremoniously canceled. But a different, far more somber and infinitely more significant kind of gathering had now convened with urgent haste in the imposing, oak-paneled confines of the base commander's private office. General Pryor, having finally reluctantly submitted to a brief but thorough medical examination at the base clinic, an examination that confirmed nothing more serious than extensive, painful bruising to his chest and a mild lingering concussion, stood with his customary, indomitable military straightness despite his undeniable ordeal. The room held an unusual, almost unprecedented assembly of senior officers. Colonel Williams, a visibly shaken Captain Brenner, several grim-faced base security chiefs, and most surprisingly, most unconventionally, police officer Caleb Dixon, with K-9 Archie sitting calmly, attentively, with an almost regal dignity at his side. The pristine white bandage on Archie's ear now sported a small, subtly embroidered American flag pattern, a whimsical, admiring addition from one of the young female medics who had tended to his wound. The preliminary after-action report has been securely transmitted to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Colonel Williams announced, his voice still betraying a hint of residual shock, as he formally closed a thick, red-stamped folder on his polished mahogany desk. They have officially classified this morning's incident as a Tier 1 national security event. The shooter's direct confirmed connections to known international terrorist organizations have significantly elevated this beyond a mere assassination attempt. This is now a matter of urgent, critical national security. General Pryor nodded slowly, his expression solemn, his eyes distant as if replaying the morning's terrifying events in his mind. "What concerns me most profoundly, Colonel," he said, his voice low and gravelly, "is not that the attempt was made. In our line of work, such threats are unfortunately an ever-present reality. What concerns me, what chills me to the bone, is that our standard, multi-layered, technologically advanced security protocols failed utterly, completely. Without Officer Dixon's K-9 partner, without this remarkable dog, we would in all probability be planning a state funeral right now, rather than conducting an after-action review." The general slowly, deliberately approached the spot where Caleb stood ramrod straight at respectful attention. Then he did something that surprised, almost shocked everyone. In the crowded, high-ranking room, he knelt down with a grunt of effort to Archie's eye level, ignoring the way the unaccustomed movement creased and wrinkled the impeccable fabric of his 4-star dress uniform. I believe I owe you both a profound, sincere apology. He said, his voice quiet, his gaze fixed directly on Archie, though his words were clearly intended for Caleb as well. Particularly your courageous, intuitive partner here. My previous, long-held and often forcefully expressed professional assessment of the military's K-9 program was not just demonstrably incorrect, gentlemen. It was, as today's events have so terrifyingly, so vividly illustrated, dangerously, almost fatally misinformed. The general paused, a flicker of some deep, unreadable emotion crossing his stern, weathered face. He seemed to make a significant internal decision. I think, he continued, his voice taking on a more personal, almost confessional tone. I think it's appropriate under these extraordinary circumstances to share something with you that I haven't discussed publicly or even privately for many, many years. My deep-seated, almost visceral opposition to the widespread deployment of the K-9 program. It wasn't based solely on purely objective professional assessment or budgetary concerns, as I often claimed. The room remained respectfully completely silent. Every eye was fixed on the general. Many years ago, he continued, his voice now softer, tinged with a deep, ancient pain. During Operation Eastern Shield, in the early brutal days of that conflict, my forward command unit operating deep in hostile territory was ambushed. A devastating, perfectly executed enemy attack. We lost 17 good men that day. 17, including a young, dedicated K-9 handler and his exceptionally well-trained dog. For years, for decades, I blamed that K-9 unit. I blamed that dog for failing to detect the ambush, for failing to provide adequate warning. The air in the room was thick with unspoken sympathy, with shared understanding of the burdens of command. What I learned many years later, the general confessed, his voice now barely a whisper. Through declassified after-action reports, through the painful, reluctant testimony of survivors, but what I stubbornly, arrogantly refused to fully accept, to internalize until today, was that the young K-9 handler had actually reported potential threat indicators. He had noted his dog's agitated, unusual behavior in the hours leading up to the ambush. Those critical life-saving warnings, they were dismissed by the command chain. They were dismissed by me. We labeled them as overly cautious, as inexperienced jitters. He turned then, his gaze piercing, to face Caleb directly. Today, Officer Dixon, I very nearly made the same catastrophic, unforgivable mistake again. At the potential, almost certain cost of my own life. That is not an error of judgment, not a failing of leadership that I ever intend to repeat. With slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial movements, the general reached up and unpinned the gleaming, precious, Distinguished Service Medal from his own chest. One of the United States military's highest, most prestigious decorations, awarded only for exceptionally meritorious service in a position of great responsibility, often in direct support of combat operations. He approached Archie, who sat watching him with a same calm, intelligent, unwavering focus. Colonel Williams, he said, his voice regaining some of its customary command authority, I trust you will ensure this unprecedented action is appropriately, officially documented through all necessary channels. He then, with a surprising gentleness, carefully, reverently attached the heavy, iconic medal to the reinforced fabric of Archie's tactical K-9 vest. This honor, he stated, his voice resonating with a deep, heartfelt sincerity, is rarely, if ever, awarded outside of direct, sustained combat operations. But I can think of no more meritorious, no more distinguished service than the selfless, courageous act of saving the life of a fellow soldier, while simultaneously, unhesitatingly risking your own. General, sir, Captain Brenner interjected, his voice slightly choked with emotion, his earlier anger completely forgotten, replaced by a profound, almost overwhelming sense of pride. I will personally ensure that this extraordinary action receives immediate, proper documentation and the highest possible official recognition in MWD Archie's permanent service record, sir. See that you do, Captain, General Pryor replied, his stern, commanding presence now fully restored. But this formal recognition, however deserved, however significant, is in itself not sufficient. Not nearly sufficient to address the profound lessons learned here today. He turned back to Caleb, his gaze sharp, assessing. Officer Dixon, I have spent the last hour engaged in a series of secure, high-level conference calls with the leadership of the Joint Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg. The actionable intelligence we have already gathered from today's foiled assassination attempt strongly suggests that this was not an isolated incident. It appears to be part of a much larger, highly sophisticated, internationally coordinated effort, targeting multiple high-ranking United States military officials, both at home and abroad. The general's expression became even more focused, more intense, his mind clearly shifting into the rarefied, high-stakes strategic territory where he had so deservedly built his legendary, almost mythical global reputation. As a direct result of today's events and the clear, undeniable capability demonstrated by your K9 partner Jisuk, is immediately forming a new highly specialized covert protective detail. This elite unit will incorporate exceptionally skilled K9 teams partnered with handlers who have demonstrated not only superior technical skills, but also exceptional field judgment and an intuitive understanding of their K9 partners. This unit will operate directly under my personal command structure. Its primary mission will be to provide discreet, agile, and highly effective close protection for designated high-value military and diplomatic personnel, particularly in high-threat, non-permissive environments. It will also critically help us to fundamentally restructure, to reimagine our entire strategic approach to K9 integration and utilization across all branches of the armed forces. Officer Dixon, I want you and MWD Archie to be founding members of this new unit, effective immediately. He paused, letting the full weight of his words sink in. Your team, your partnership demonstrated unique, almost inexplicable capabilities here today, capabilities that we desperately need to study, to understand, to harness, and if possible, to replicate across the force. This assignment will involve highly specialized advanced training, extremely sensitive, often classified deployments to unpredictable global hotspots, and a level of personal and professional responsibility that few ever encounter. Colonel Williams stepped forward, his face alight with a mixture of pride and paternal concern. This is an absolutely extraordinary, unprecedented opportunity, Dixon, he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. A direct commission into a JSOC elite unit. The general, believe me, does not make these kinds of offers lightly or often. There is, I must be candid, significant, inherent personal risk involved. General Pryor continued, his gaze unwavering, his tone deadly serious. Today's brutal, audacious incident serves as a stark, undeniable confirmation of what our intelligence analysts have been suggesting for months. Our adversaries are becoming far more sophisticated, far more ruthless in their attempts to target and neutralize key leadership assets. The operational environments you will be asked to deploy into will be exceptionally challenging, often hostile, the threats ambiguous and ever-present. He gestured with a newfound respect towards Archie, who had been listening intently, his head cocked as if understanding every word. But I have now seen with my own eyes firsthand what this incredible partnership, this unique synergy between man and dog, is truly capable of. Perhaps, the general mused almost to himself, perhaps sometimes the most valuable, most reliable security assets are not in fact the ones we painstakingly engineer in our advanced research laboratories, but rather the ones that are forged organically in the crucible of shared experience, built on unwavering trust-honed instinct and profound, often inexplicable natural abilities. Abilities we are perhaps only just beginning to truly understand, to appreciate. Caleb straightened to his fullest height, his mind reeling, his heart pounding, his decision already irrevocably made. General, sir, he said, his voice clear, steady, resolute. Archie and I would be deeply honored and immensely proud to accept this critical assignment. General Pryor nodded once, a curt, almost imperceptible gesture of profound approval. Outstanding, Dixon, outstanding. Report to Andrews Air Force Base, dressed for immediate deployment at 0600 hours tomorrow morning. You will be fully briefed on the highly classified specifics of your first operational assignment while en route to your initial staging area. As the momentous career-altering meeting finally concluded and the other officers began to quietly, respectfully disperse, General Pryor held Caleb back for a final private word. "Officer Dixon, one more thing," he said, his voice now softer, more reflective. "That dog's almost preternatural ability to detect and respond to imminent unseen threats that eluded every single one of our sophisticated technological safeguards. It represents something unique, something invaluable, something we absolutely must study more systematically, more scientifically. Your partnership, your bond, it might just fundamentally rewrite our entire operational approach to dignitary protection, to counterterrorism, to modern warfare itself." Sometimes, General Pryor said, and for the very first time since the entire terrifying ordeal had begun, a genuine, almost boyish hint of a smile touched the corners of his stern, weathered lips. "Sometimes, officer, what initially appears to us as inexplicable disruption, as unacceptable deviation from established protocol, is in fact profound innovation, a paradigm shift that we are simply not yet adequately equipped or perhaps not yet wise enough to fully recognize or appreciate." One short whirlwind week later, the cold, pale light of dawn had barely begun to break over the distant sleeping horizon as Caleb stood his breath misting in the chill morning air on the windswept tarmac of Andrews Air Force Base. His standard-issue duffel bag, packed hastily but efficiently, lay at his feet. Archie, alert and eager, sat patiently, watchfully beside him, a silent, tawny sentinel in the pre-dawn gloom. The Belgian Malinois looked impressively, almost intimidatingly professional in his new state-of-the-art tactical K9 gear. Specialized lightweight body armor, a multi-spectrum environmental sensor array, and an integrated encrypted communication system. Equipment reserved exclusively for the military's most elite Joint Special Operations K9 units. The only visible lingering indication of his recent life-threatening injury was a small, neat, pale pink scar line along the very edge of his left ear, a scar already healing rapidly, destined to become just another almost invisible badge of honor, another silent testament to his courage and his distinguished and clearly far from over military service record. A sleek, matte gray C-17 Globemaster III transport aircraft, its massive fuselage looking like some prehistoric beast in the dim ethereal light, waited nearby on the tarmac, its cavernous rear cargo bay already yawning open as teams of specialized technicians, moving with quiet, practiced efficiency under the watchful eyes of heavily armed security personnel, loaded pallets of highly classified mission-critical equipment. General Pryor's gleaming, iconic Distinguished Service Medal, Caleb noted with a surge of quiet pride, remained securely prominently attached to the front of Archie's new, custom-fitted tactical vest. The official, almost unprecedented paperwork making the extraordinary award official a decoration almost never bestowed upon a non-human recipient had been processed through the labyrinthine military bureaucracy with a truly remarkable, almost unheard-of speed, clearly bypassing or perhaps trampling numerous entrenched bureaucratic channels that normally took months, if not years, to navigate. "Officer Dixon," a gruff, familiar voice called out, and Caleb turned to see Master Sergeant Wilson, a grizzled, no-nonsense veteran of countless covert operations, approaching him, a ruggedized, encrypted data tablet clutched in his hand. "Final pre-flight operational briefing, sir, before we depart." Caleb nodded, accepting the offered device, his eyes quickly expertly scanning the highly classified, densely worded operational parameters that scrolled across its screen. Their primary initial destination, he now learned, had been revealed to him only that morning during a secure, eyes-only briefing, a politically volatile, strategically critical diplomatic summit being held under conditions of extreme secrecy in a remote, undisclosed location in Southeast Asia. Multiple high-ranking United States military and government officials would be gathering there amidst credible, highly specific intelligence reports suggesting an imminent, significant threat from regional extremist factions. "You and Archie," Master Sergeant Wilson explained, his voice low and serious as he pointed to specific highlighted sections of the digital briefing document, "will be operating as an advanced independent surveillance and threat detection asset. Essentially, you're our early warning system. General Pryor personally believes, based on recent events, that Archie's unique detection capabilities might well identify potential threats, particularly asymmetric ones, that our standard technologically reliant security protocols could potentially miss. You will have considerable operational autonomy, officer, particularly when it comes to on-the-ground threat assessment and immediate response decisions." The general's orders on that were explicit. "We've also incorporated some brand new cutting-edge tech into Archie's operational gear." Wilson continued, kneeling briefly to indicate a small, almost invisible miniaturized camera and a sophisticated encrypted audio communication system that had been seamlessly, almost invisibly integrated into the dog's tactical vest. The R&D boys at DARPA worked around the clock on this new system, custom designing it to our specifications. It allows for real-time encrypted transmission of Archie's direct visual perspective, his physiological vital signs, and even his olfactory sensor readings directly back to the tactical command center. Plus, it incorporates an enhanced long-range encrypted communication link between you two, allowing for silent, almost telepathic commands and feedback, even when you're operating at considerable distances from each other or in high-interference environments. "Dixon," a commanding, instantly recognizable voice called out across the noisy tarmac, and both Caleb and Archie turned as one to see General Pryor himself approaching, flanked by his usual phalanx of close protection security personnel. The general, it was clear, had personally meticulously overseen the rapid, almost unprecedented formation of this new elite K-9 unit, pulling countless strings, calling in decades-old favors, and cutting through mountains of bureaucratic red tape across multiple command structures to assemble this highly specialized hand-picked team in what was, by military standards, record almost unbelievable time. "Sure, sir," Caleb responded, snapping crisply to attention, Archie mirroring his handler's posture with an almost human understanding of military formality. The general nodded towards the waiting, now fully loaded aircraft. "Your new team, Officer Dixon, is already aboard and awaiting your arrival. 7 of the finest K-9 handlers and their exceptional K-9 partners, drawn from every branch of the Special Operations community, all personally selected by me based on their exceptional field performance records, their proven courage, and their unique handler K-9 synergy. You, Officer Dixon, will be serving as the operational lead for all K-9 elements within this new task force." Caleb blinked in genuine, unfeigned surprise, his mind struggling to process the unexpected, immense responsibility. "Lead, sir, but I'm just a police officer, not a commissioned—" "You and Archie Dixon," General Pryor interrupted, his voice firm, decisive, demonstrated a level of intuitive judgment, of courageous initiative, of profound interspecies partnership under extreme duress that simply cannot be taught, cannot be replicated in any training program, however sophisticated. That officer is the precise quality, the rare and invaluable asset that we desperately need, leading this unique, groundbreaking unit." The C-17's loadmaster, a burly, no-nonsense Air Force sergeant, signaled from the top of the aircraft's massive loading ramp, indicating that all final preparations for immediate departure were now complete. The time for talking was over. "It's time to go, Dixon," General Pryor said, his voice softer now, more personal, as he extended his hand towards Caleb. "Your country, your fellow soldiers, are asking more of you and of your remarkable partner than most handlers, most soldiers, will ever be asked to face in their entire careers. The threats out there are real, they are evolving, they are lethal. The stakes for all of us are extraordinarily, terrifyingly high." Caleb accepted the offered handshake firmly, his gaze steady, unwavering. "Archie and I won't let you down, General, sir. You have our word." "I know you won't, Dixon," The general replied, a rare, almost invisible flicker of genuine warmth touching his tired, intelligent eyes. That's precisely why you're going. As Caleb and Archie climbed the steep, echoing metal loading ramp and stepped into the cavernous, dimly lit interior of the massive transport aircraft, he reflected, with a sense of profound, almost surreal disbelief, on how completely, how irrevocably their lives had transformed in the space of one short, chaotic, terrifying week. The deep, resonant rumbling of the C-17's powerful jet engines as they spooled up for takeoff signaled not just the beginning of a new perilous mission, but the dawn of an entirely new, uncharted chapter in their extraordinary, unbreakable partnership. Whatever unknown, unseen challenges awaited them in the volatile, unpredictable landscapes of Southeast Asia, and in the many other dangerous, forgotten corners of the world that would undoubtedly follow, they would face them together. The handler who had finally unequivocally learned to trust his remarkable partner's inexplicable life-saving instincts, even especially when they defied all conventional logic, all human explanation. And the courageous, enigmatic dog whose extraordinary, almost supernatural abilities had saved countless lives had rewritten military doctrine when all other more vaunted, more expensive systems had utterly, catastrophically failed. Settling into his designated seat in the aircraft's Spartan troop compartment, as the massive, heavily laden aircraft began its slow, ponderous taxi towards the main runway, Caleb looked down at Archie, who sat calmly, watchfully alert, and ready between his feet, utterly unfazed by the noise, the vibration, the unfamiliar surroundings. He was as always ready for whatever came next. "Well, buddy," Caleb said quietly, his voice barely audible above the roar of the engines as he reached down to scratch that familiar beloved spot behind Archie's newly bandaged ear. "Just you and me now against the world, it seems." He paused, a slow smile spreading across his face. "The real work, I reckon, begins now." Archie looked up at him, then his intelligent, knowing amber eyes shining with an unwavering, almost human understanding, and offered a single soft, contented thump of his plumed tail against the cold metal floor of the aircraft. It was as if he were saying with a quiet canine confidence that needed no human words that he'd been ready, truly ready all along.